There's no cohesive structure here.
That's a big problem in the military as well. The reason you're seeing all these incompetent, ineffectual general officers is because of careerism. They're more interested in promoting their own career than they are giving feedback that might get them a negative response. That's what I'm being told from the from the Pentagon right
So
now.
these chiefs of staff are like, they don't want to get, or not these chiefs, but these joint chiefs or whatever, they don't want to get fired. They don't want to get demoted.
Right.
And Biden has the power to do that.
It's beyond. Yeah, they serve at the pleasure of the president. He can remove and replace them whenever he wants. But it's beyond that. What happened with James Mattis, who was a darling of the American military for a while? I mean, service members loved this guy for a while. And then he was part of this, what was it? The 700 general officers and former intelligence people that wrote a letter against Donald Trump supporting Joe Biden for the election. He was one of those guys that did that. And about a month afterwards, he got hired to the board of General Dynamics, right? You know what I mean? It's weird. So it's well beyond just the careerism. It's what that career turns into afterwards. Lloyd Austin worked for a company, right? And that company was bidding on a multi-billion-dollar contract, and the U.S. government had said that they're probably not going to get it. It doesn't look good for them. We're going to go with the other guy. And he becomes the Secretary of Defense, and I think about a month later, or 3 months later, that his former company gets that contract. This is weird. So it's not just, I get what you're saying about removing all these politicians, but that is the very top layer.
Right.
Of scum, if you want to call it.
Well,
that.
yeah. So I would go into this and say we have a structural decay across the board.
Correct. Yeah.
When people are willing to vote for no reason other than tribe to earn points, or because they believe some garbage nonsense,
right? Or
in this instance, you've got, people aren't reporting crimes because what's the point? I've been in the situation. I'm sure you guys have as well, where it's like, I had one incident where I was driving with my brother and we got hit by a cab. And the cops were like, okay, we'll file all this, but you guys are going to show up, right? Like, you'll show up to court if we do this?
Right, yeah, because they have to show up regardless if you do or not.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, let's do this. And it's easy to say at the time, and then what happens? A month goes by, and they're like, okay, here's the date and time you got to show up. And I'm like, dude, I got work.
Yeah.
Like, I can't just
sometimes
go off
years
work
go
for this,
by,
man.
Right? If it's a serious enough crime, sometimes years go by. If they have a good enough attorney, sometimes years go by.
So we've got structural decay across the board in every facet. And so, yeah, maybe it's fair to say just simply recalling, Newsom isn't enough. It's good. I definitely think, getting a year of someone else in there is a good thing. But, you're talking about the military. I've gotten emails. We've heard a ton of stories, people resigning. Someone sent me a resignation letter recently. Someone apparently, was an officer and announced over just the wokeness, CRT, and the vax mandate. They're like, I am quitting, and it's actually sad, really, because I've heard these stories of people who are like, it was my dream to be, to have a career in the military, work there until retirement, and now it's like I'm in my mid-30s and I'm out, I'm done, can't do it.
Right.
Some people even giving up like their pensions. And
which
stuff.
It's super sad too, because who's going to fight this next war? It's not going to be these guys. We saw in Afghanistan this past couple of weeks, right? Work needed to get done. And I have no lack of faith in the 82nd Airborne guys who were there or the Marines that were there. I'm sure, I have no doubt that they're plenty capable of doing that job. But because of the leadership there, they weren't allowed to do that, right? So I wonder who's going to fight the next one. And we saw the answer. It was guys like Tim Kennedy and these other guys that went over there on their own dime, right? Guys that are, well, Tim's still in, but everybody but him was already out of the military. They had served their country. They were done. And they spent their own money to go back to conduct these operations, not to go kill people or blow things up. They went over there to save people, right? That's what the American warfighter does. They are, and it troubles me that the ranks of the U.S. service member have now been infected with this nonsense.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't know, like you were talking about police earlier, I'm not sure how much you can trust the individual at this point. You know what I mean? It's getting bad. Like this female staff sergeant that posted a video, like, when people are coming door to door, it's going to be me and I'll shoot you or whatever. Like, First of all, you never held a gun in your life, and it's pretty obvious. But that's who
they want. Though.
This lieutenant colonel gets booted out of his position and then he resigns. This woman, I don't know what's happened to her. Have you heard any news about her?
Nothing.
That seems like somebody that should be immediately kicked out of the military.
They want stormtroopers. They don't want rational thinking individuals who are going to say like, here's the Constitution, here's what my
You got an officer that publicly said she was going to storm people's doors.
She was a non-commissioned officer, staff sergeant, E6. Yeah. Oh, she
You
didn't
got
say
her
she
name?
was going to. She said when it starts or whatever she said. I don't want to paraphrase too
Right.
much, but she basically said the people going door to door, that's going to be me, and I will.
That's terror.
She was like,
I mean, that's a form of terror.
She was
Right.
like, what do you think's going to happen when we're ordered to,
Yeah.
point you down? It's going to be us, and we're going to do it, and stuff like
Well,
that.
instead, what she says is you refuse the command.
I firmly believe, and have believed for a very long time, that if ordered, most probably enlisted would do it, would absolutely shoot an American. No joke.
People
And
are robots.
Well,
man.
we've seen it before, right? Kent State.
yeah.
It's happened in our parents' lifetime.
Yeah.
1970, May
And-
4th. I went to Kent State for college. They fired on the crowd. The National Guard fired on the crowd, killed 4 college kids.
Yep, one guy took a bullet through his hand. No, but so I've been around military people for a large portion of my life, and there's a lot of people who argue with me in chat or like an email and being like, you don't understand, soldiers, they'll do the right thing, they're not robots, and I'm like,
They're not robots.
It's the
they're-
bystander effect, though, right? People. Psychology is infectious. Nothing is more infectious than psychology, and people in groups. It's the mob. We've been discussing the psychology of the mob for as long as human beings have been discussing psychology. The Stanford Prison Experiment, for example. You put people in hierarchical structures of power, and then mob rule takes over, and then you go to base instinct. That's what happens unless you're very well trained.
But when it comes to the military, it's actually really simple to understand why this she says E6. You said she's right. They would do this. You know why? It's really really simple. If Ian is running through the streets with a red bandana on or whatever, maybe he's jogging. That's
Right.
it. And then she's standing there and she gets an order like, that's the guy. He's the terrorist. Take him down. Take him down. Do you think she's going to be like, nah, I don't trust
she
you?
shouldn't question that order. I mean,
She's
that's
gonna
the
be
weird
like,
thing about
you
the
got it.
military. You're like, if I question the order, are people going to die?
I mean, we're talking about the Bourne Identity right now, right? Or I guess the third movie where he finally meets up with the old guy and he's like,
Is that the Bourne Supremacy?
I think, or the Bourne Redundancy, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, right.
I'm not, but it came down to like, you got to shoot this guy. Why? And the reason was they wanted to break the person, right? Your individualism is gone. You thinking is gone. You kill who we tell you to kill. And that's not how it works. That's not how we trained our people in the 82nd Airborne. We put ourselves at great risk on a relatively regular basis to not inflict harm on people unnecessarily, right? Can't say the same about Obama, right? The drone strike stuff killed a lot of innocent people. I think something like 30% of the people killed in those strikes were just standing there.
One of the first things he did was bombing a village of women and children.
I've heard numbers that collateral damage of drone strikes are like
They started they
enormously large, like 90%.
It's rough, yeah.
But
they started just claiming that it's a military age male, they're an enemy combatant.
That's right. Yeah. Anybody, a military age male, by the way, is a male 14 years old or older.
Right. No, so I think people need to understand this when they just to reiterate to a certain extent. Think about yourself standing around with your friends, you hear a report like Antifa's coming in, they're armed, they got handguns. You see what just happened in Portland where they were shooting at the Proud Boys randomly, like this was like there was no reason. Okay, so they were retreating. The Proud Boys were walking forward and they had clubs and shields or whatever. Probably not a good idea. Regardless, this guy turns around with a gun and starts randomly just firing and hits one of the guys in the legs. Now imagine you hear that, and then all of a sudden you see a dude with what looks like a weapon, and he's wearing all black, and then he's running towards you, and they're like, that's him, stop him. Are you going to be like, hold on there a minute?
It's not even just from your leadership. The panic can happen in those situations under any normal or any number of circumstances. So we're talking about the one of the founding moments of our republic here. The reason that John Adams ended up getting involved with the Continental Congress and the movement towards becoming America, right, and breaking off of the British Empire is because there were British soldiers in Boston and they were guarding some areas. There was a protest by the Sons of Liberty, which was run by his cousin Sam Adams, right? Not the beer guy, or maybe
not
he
the
is.
beer
No,
guy.
it's not
Maybe
the
he
beer
is
guy.
the beer guy. I don't know. He was a politician, but Sam Adams is doing this thing. Somebody behind the British soldiers. Well, first of all, people are throwing heavy objects and hit one of the kids in the head, and then somebody behind them yelled fire.
Yep.
Right. Finally, through the trial, they figured it out. And John Adams represented the British people.
Yeah.
And he felt they got a good trial. They did. They got off. And then still the Crown sent over an edict saying all military court-martials will now be tried back in England. So he's like, well, you don't even believe in our ability to self-govern. Now I'm going to get involved. And he became the second president of the United States. So this stuff can happen in any kind of power vacuum. It doesn't matter if it's a leader doing it or if it's just the fog of war. You know what I mean? And imagine what the fog of war looks like in modern day when it's brother on brother.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that it's not evil when, a lot of people were criticizing this young woman over saying it. And, I didn't really want to do a big segment on that because I'm like, I don't know what the full context is. I don't know. It's like a 5-10 second clip or whatever. Who knows what she's talking about? It was jump cutty. And I'm like, it's not much I can add to that. If there was like a 10-minute thing she was talking about, or there were other videos where she was explaining why this subject came up, maybe there'd be more to criticize. Right. But I think you need to realize you're surrounded by your buddies, people you know, people you trust, people who are there to protect you. And that's you. That's your group. You're not going to sit around and wait to find out when you're dealing with a conflict situation. I've been in conflict situations, and I don't sit back and be like, well, hold on, maybe this guy in the Antifa thing who was threatening us might not be Antifa. No, we leave. We get out. Right. Now, if you're there actively trying to suppress or prevent violence, and then you see someone, you're not just going to assume, well, let's just calmly talk to this guy. No, this is why whenever I've been arrested, like legit arrested by cops while covering things, I've always been released without being processed. Like charges never occur or anything like that. Because when I was in DC on J20 in 2017, when Trump was being inaugurated, they surrounded everybody. I got trapped in this group. It was a bunch of Antifa types. I stood off to the side. And I talked to the cops that were standing there with their batons out guarding everybody. I was like, hey, I just want to let you know I'm a journalist. And they were like, don't care. And I'm like, is there a supervisor? And then they were like, some guy behind him was like, I'll get a supervisor. And I told the supervisor, like, hey, I just want to let you know I'm a journalist. And he was like, doesn't matter. You're all under arrest. And I was like, just letting you know. When I was talking to the cop who was standing next to me because he's guarding this group, I'd be like, officer, I'm going to place my bag down and I'm going to be putting my shirt away and taking my phone out just so you know. And then he would like nod a little bit, and then I would unzip it slowly. I'd open it wide, pull out my phone, put my shirt in, because he doesn't know who I am. He's not going to sit here pretending he knows that I'm not Antifa or whatever or violent.
Right. That's a good.
That's pulling out a club from my bag.
It's a very good point. Why not in that scenario just be for the person who might be on the threatened end of that exchange? Am I really going to let my politeness get me killed? Does that seem like a good trade-off to you? Or could we as a society agree that this is a messed up situation? Neither one of us wanted it to come to this, but here it is. So let's everybody put your hands up and back away slowly, and then we'll go in our separate directions or whatever, right? I mean, it seems like a reasonable way to handle that, but people get super emotionally charged. And look, I'm not innocent of that. I get pissed off as much as anybody else, right? Yeah. Probably more so. I lash out all the time. I've been in fights with some of my closest friends over nonsense. Like Alex Jones is one of my closest friends. We talk all the time. He actually just sent me some cool videos of him shooting the other day. He went pretty hard after some of my buddies at Black Rifle. I thought he was out of line, and I said some things that I thought also were out of line. Like, and the funny thing is, a lot of people on the internet talk about it still. 2 days after that, we were sharing photos from respective lakes that we were at. You know what I mean? It wasn't ever really a rift between us, but it gets perceived like that, and it's unfortunate that it can come to that sometimes. And I think it's because things get so heated, we start to prioritize the wrong stuff. I think we need to understand that there's different bubbles within bubbles within bubbles, right? So we have the largest bubble of like America. Well, technically, I guess you have the largest bubble of the world. Then you have like America within the world. Right. Then you have the different regions, different states, different cities. Within that, there's different power structures, different authorities. You always have that trope of the cop investigating a murder, and the FBI guy walks in and he goes, "We're taking over." Yeah, this is my jurisdiction.
Yeah, the feds are involved.
Like Willem Dafoe and Boondock Saints. Yeah. That's who the blank I am or whatever. Yeah. Excellent performance. Mm-hmm. But so when it comes to, communication breakdown, when you have things moving so quickly, it's ultimately going to be like the people around you is the paramount to be protected. And sometimes there's even friendly fire between different law enforcement divisions, or there's one funny story where like the DEA and the FBI like busted each other. Oh yeah, I saw that. Setting up like a drug sting. That's or something. So fun. I'm glad that happened. That's just I as a taxpayer, I don't love the fact that taxpayer money was wasted, but I guess if it was wasted on them with each other and not busting some poor guy that's just trying to get high, to be honest. Yeah. Leave him alone. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat.
and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.